Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In today's tabletop review and installation video, I'm going to be showing you one of the easiest ways to address bulb out errors if you swap out your low beam headlights from halogen to LEDs, or your fog lights from halogen to LEDs. Typically, I would always recommend, if you're going to upgrade your headlights or your fog lights with an LED or an HID kit, buy one that comes with CAN bus resistors. That way you don't run into an issue of turning on your headlights or turning on your fog lights and the bulb out error pops up on your dash or your multifunction display. That may not always be possible depending upon what particular product you're looking at. In my situation, I put some H7 LEDs in my fog lights. I was unable to find an LED H7 that I liked that came with CAN bus resistors. So I bought the set that I liked, put them in, and of course I'm getting a bulb out error message on the dash, and my multifunction display in my Volkswagen EOS is also saying left fog light out and right fog light out. So the easiest way to fix an issue like that is to buy a set of resistors that are designed specifically to address that particular situation. In previous videos, you might have saw that I installed some Sylvania resistors on my rear taillights because I modified those taillights to have a donut style light emission on them. By modifying those, that created a bulb out error as well. So I added resistors for those. So now I'm dealing with the fog lights. So what I did was I did a cursory search of Amazon and eBay. I found these on eBay by an eBay seller called Spark HID. These ran me $15. And what these are resistors that have been pre-wired up for H7. So all I need to do with these is I don't need to cut any wires or anything. I just need to unplug the fog lights, plug the vehicle wiring harness in the one end of this and the other end of this into the fog light, and then mount these resistors somewhere, and boom, I'm going to be done. So as for mounting these resistors, these things get extremely hot. So you want to mount them to metal if applicable. If you can't mount them to metal, it's advisable not to mount them to plastic, but maybe tie them off and let them hang kind of free air somewhere to where they're not touching anything, and you don't run the issue of these coming in contact with something and burning it and or melting it. These do get very hot. So these particular ones appear, from what I can see, to have a good build quality. I'm seeing solder joints here. I'm seeing shrink wrapped. I'm seeing insulation material here where the wire might come in contact with this resistor. So I'm seeing some thought put into these. I don't know if these are professionally made or if somebody makes these at their home. But regardless, you know, there's nothing for me to fault on these. These appear to be well made. The Molex, well, these aren't Molex connectors, but these types of, I refer to all these types of plugs with little metal pins in them as Molex. The wiring in these pins appear to be crimped correctly using the correct tool, and we've got proper insulation material going on here. So out of the package for $15 shipped, this is very reasonable, and of course that makes the assumption that it fixes my bulb out error problem. So that's about all I have to say on this tabletop discussion. Let's move on to the EOS and installing these. Okay, so moving on to removing the fog light, you're going to need a T20 Torx, possibly flashlight, to find out what's going on down in here. You've got a T20 bolt here, here, and one right here. So we're going to remove these. I should note that the cover removal process, although I'm doing this on a 2008, it is a valid process to use all the way up to 2015 for your EOS. I can't speak for other vehicles, of course. And there's our fog light and our plug right there. So we're going to unplug this. There's a little clip right here that you squeeze and the plug will slide out from your fog light. So you can see I've got 8.7, small 8.7 LEDs with a small little fan in them. That's one thing about LEDs that have fans, is when you turn on these lights, depending upon where you're at, you can hear the fans running, and I can definitely hear these. It's not that big of a deal, but it's something to make note of. So our next step is to install our harness adapters. Okay, I did most of the fiddling for this off camera. And I've got the resistor wiring harness tied up, and there's not a lot of metal locations behind the fog light. It's mostly plastic, and there's some wiring harnesses, and the washer reservoir is back there. You can see, hopefully you can see that a little bit, you can see the gold or copper colored resistor. It's actually mounted to a metal bracket, and it is directly behind the horn. So it's about 1.5 inches away from the horn, secured to that metal bracket. That's really the only location I could find for it. Yeah, I'm sorry about the lighting, but two of my other camera lights have already gone out, so I'm down to the handheld. So I've got that secured there. It's away from all the plastics and away from all the wiring harnesses, and it works as it should. So we'll be back for my final thoughts after I get this all put together and fully tested. Alright, I've moved over to the driver's side. This driver's side was a bit easier. I'm trying to get some light in there. There's a bracket on top of the horn that's on this side, and that bracket had a open bolt hole for something that's not there. So what I did was I attached the resistor to that metal bracket. Let's see if we can get an angle at that. There we go. I attached the resistor to that metal bracket, and then of course routed the wiring so nothing's in contact with the resistor. So the resistor is sitting on top of that metal bracket, and hopefully that provides enough heat dissipation so there isn't any problems. Of course, I'm going to test this. I'm going to go ahead and turn the fog lights on and run the fog lights for an hour or so, check the heat of the resistors, and make sure that nothing catches on fire. So that's the driver's side, which was a little bit easier to do than the passenger side. Also, on the tool requirement, I mentioned earlier that it was a T20. You can get away with the T20 on the bolts that hold the fog lights in, but they're actually a T25. So for proper reference, if you have a T25, go with that. Worst case scenario, break out your T20. That should get the job done. Anyway, so that is pretty much going to wrap up the installation part of this. I'm going to do some temperature testing with the fog lights, and I'll be back with my final comments in just a bit. Alright, I'm going to wrap up this video on the installation of resistors onto the fog lights of the Volkswagen VR6. I've had the fog lights on for about 45 minutes, and the resistors are extremely hot, which is to be expected. So definitely heed my warning. Don't be curious and touch them. They're extremely hot. I've double checked all the wiring, everything in close proximity to the resistors. Nothing is heating up to the point where I would be concerned. The insulation that is included on these custom wired resistors is working. The wiring in some areas is warm but not hot. Nothing that I would consider dangerous. Where the resistors are mounted, the surface is close to it, and in my particular instance, it would be the horns on both sides of the car. The horns are not absorbing any heat, at least not enough heat to deform them or damage them. None of the other existing wiring anywhere around these resistors are getting warm or hot. So I believe both of these locations are safe, and I'm going to leave them just the way they are. So just so you can see, this is the driver's side because it's the most convenient for me. I have been reaching my hand in there and feeling the wiring harness, specifically the wiring with the white heat insulator loom on it, and the other associated wiring and components in the horn that are all in close proximity. So I believe we're going to be good to go on this. And of course, when you're driving, there's going to be airflow back into that area, so that will aid in cooling. Right now the car has just been sitting here and with no additional cooling. Anyway, that's going to wrap this up, and hopefully if you run into a similar issue, a solution like this can help you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.